April 2nd, 1972. More than 200 North Vietnamese tanks bear down on a single bridge in northern South Vietnam, the last obstacle between an armored army and a strategic collapse. One Marine hangs beneath that steel span for 3 hours under direct fire, rigging explosives to stop an army. It would take 54 years for the full measure of what he did to be recognized. North of the Viet River, the ground shook with the weight of armored columns pressing south. The People's Army of Vietnam had opened the Easter Offensive on March 30, 1972, unleashing its largest mechanized force of the war. More than 200 tanks, primarily Type 59s and lighter Type 62s, rolled in formation, spearheading a multiple division assault across the demilitarized zone. Behind them, over 200,000 troops advanced in staggered waves, supported by artillery and rocket fire that pounded every defensive position along Highway 1. Intelligence intercepts identified the 324th Division and the 29th Tank Regiment of the 10th Division as the core of this armored spearhead. Their objective was clear: seize the Dong Ha Bridge, the only crossing in the sector capable of supporting the weight of tanks and supply convoys. By April 1st, lead elements had breached the demilitarized zone and driven to within 5 kilometers of the bridge, their tracks carving fresh scars in the muddy approaches. The columns moved with calculated speed, overrunning outposts and scattering South Vietnamese defenders. Each hour brought the enemy closer to the river, compressing the time available for any effective response. Every report from forward observers grew more urgent. Armor massed at the edge of the floodplain. Engineers probed for weaknesses. Artillery bracketed the southern bank. The fate of the central corridor now hinged on whether the bridge could be denied before the tanks reached its steel span. For the defenders at Dong Ha, the margin for delay had narrowed to minutes, not hours. The Viet River forms a natural barrier in northern South Vietnam, and at Dong Ha, a single bridge determined the fate of entire divisions. This was not just any crossing. Its main span reached about 110 meters, built as a Warren Truss, steel triangles engineered to handle relentless military traffic. Only this bridge could support tanks up to 70 tons. No other structure in the region matched its load rating or reliability. The next possible crossings, at Cam Lo and Thu Tin, lay 30 to 45 kilometers away over rough, often impassable roads. For heavy armor, these detours meant hours lost and columns split, their momentum stalled by mud and distance. For military planners, the bridge's value was measured in both time and tonnage. An intact span allowed North Vietnamese tanks to cross in minutes, keeping their advance tight and fast. Destroying it forced a halt. Engineers would have to attempt dangerous fording or build makeshift pontoons, all under threat from artillery and airstrikes. The equation was stark. As long as the bridge stood, the road to Quang Tri and Hue stayed open. Bring it down, and the offensive slowed to a crawl. The river at Dong Ha was too wide and deep for tanks to ford, especially under fire. Built to U.S. military standards in the 1960s, the bridge's steel and concrete exceeded anything else nearby. No parallel roads, no hidden crossings, just this single bottleneck, stopping the armored spearhead depended entirely on flawless demolition. John Ripley's career traced a path through some of the most demanding training and assignments the Marine Corps could offer. In 1965, he graduated from the United States Army Ranger School at Fort Benning, earning a reputation for physical endurance and leadership under pressure. Ranger training exposed him to the rigors of small unit tactics, survival, and the technical details of demolition, skills that would become critical in Vietnam. Afterward, Ripley joined the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, where he led long-range patrols deep into hostile territory. Reconnaissance work required more than stealth and marksmanship. It demanded improvisation, mastery of explosives, and the ability to make life-or-death decisions with limited support. Combat experience reinforced these lessons. During his first tour in Vietnam, Ripley was wounded in action and awarded the Bronze Star for valor. His actions on Hill 111, where he directed a counterattack under fire, showed a calm resolve that set him apart among his peers. By 1971, Ripley had been appointed Senior Marine Advisor to the 3rd Vietnamese Marine Battalion near Dong Ha. The advisory role placed him at the center of planning and execution, responsible for coordinating with South Vietnamese engineers and training local sappers in demolition techniques. He became the go-to officer for technical problems, especially those involving explosives and field fortifications. Ripley's blend of technical expertise, combat-tested judgment, and advisory experience made him the obvious candidate when the fate of a critical bridge hung in the balance. In a crisis where failure meant disaster, command could entrust the demolition to no one else. Ripley climbed onto the steel framework in darkness, the river's mist swirling below and mortar bursts echoing from the northern bank. Enemy fire cracked overhead as he edged along the truss, gripping each beam with hands already raw from the climb. The demolition charges, 4 2-kilogram blocks of C4, had to be placed with absolute precision. Each charge was lashed to the main load-bearing girder, the points calculated to sever the bridge's structural spine. Rigging the explosives meant crawling hand over hand beneath the deck, suspended by a single rope, his boots scraping slick steel as he worked. The wiring, soaked from river spray and earlier rain, threatened to short out. More than once, a timer refused to arm until Ripley stripped the insulation and retwisted the leads with bare fingers. Every minute spent under the bridge invited another sweep of machine gun fire or a shell that could drop the entire span on top of him. The M41 timers, set for 7 minutes, offered just enough time to escape if nothing failed. For nearly 3 hours, Ripley moved from point to point, his world reduced to the cold metal, the weight of explosives, and the knowledge that any mistake would mean disaster for the men waiting on the south bank. When the last charge was set and the fuses burning, he hauled himself back up the rope, muscles trembling, and ran for cover. Moments later, the charges detonated in sequence, tearing a 150-foot gap in the bridge and sending steel and concrete plunging into the river below. The collapse of the Dong Ha Bridge sent shockwaves through the advancing North Vietnamese columns. With the main span gone, tanks and trucks jammed the northern approaches, their route south abruptly severed. According to MACV reports, the armoured spearhead was stalled for nearly 8 hours as engineers scrambled to find a way across the Viet River. The loss of the bridge forced regimental commanders to halt their advance, regroup, and attempt risky detours over muddy, unprepared roads far to the west. This pause proved costly. Fixed in place and exposed, the stalled vehicles became prime targets for Allied air power. U.S. Air Force F-4 Phantoms, called in by ARVN forward observers, launched a series of cluster bomb strikes on the congested columns. After-action assessments credited these sorties with destroying dozens of enemy vehicles. Estimates range from 30 to 40 tanks and trucks lost in the opening hours after the demolition. The air attacks, made possible only because the enemy was immobilized, blunted the momentum of the entire offensive. For the South Vietnamese defenders, the bridge's destruction bought vital time to reinforce positions and reorganize along the southern bank, transforming a desperate withdrawal into a stand that would hold for days. John Ripley's valor at Dong Ha first earned the Navy Cross on May 14, 1972. The citation credited his heroism, but internal Marine Corps records reveal a divided board. Some saw Ripley as simply executing orders. Others argued his actions went far beyond. The Medal of Honors, strict standard, proof of gallantry above and beyond the call, was rarely met for advisory roles during the war's final years. In 2015, the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation launched a formal petition collecting eyewitness accounts, engineering analyses, and battlefield reports. By 2019, a comprehensive upgrade packet reached the Department of the Navy, bolstered by technical reviews and new testimony. Momentum built as veterans and historians was pressed the case. 2025 brought forward Ripley's comrades and military experts, highlighting the demolition's impact during the Easter offensive. The review board considered fresh engineering evidence and Vietnam-era precedents. In March 2026, the Senate voted unanimously to authorize the Medal of Honor. The Secretary of the Navy signed the order, and the President approved the posthumous upgrade, 54 years after the bridge fell. Today, the Dong Ha crossing exists only in photographs, yet its fate still shapes how nations judge courage under fire. As policymakers debate the standards of military valor, Ripley's ordeal forces a timeless reckoning. Do we recognize sacrifice when it matters, or only when history insists we cannot ignore it?